Okay, so, um,
So,
so,
hello,
yeah.
I'm Patonel. I'm the vice president of students at Warren College.
I'm Fran Billings. I'm a distinguished alumni, and the Student Government Association of Warren College had asked me to help out by negotiating with your side on issues that came out of the brawl that occurred on campus. So we should just go over the rules and see what to change.
Yes, let's do this and then talk about the punishments.
Okay.
First of all, regarding to the number of guests that are allowed to be on a party on campus, now there are between 15 and 30. So I will say to set a maximum of 10 students because I think the main problem is when a lot of people gather in one apartment, it starts to be really complicated to keep calm.
Well, on our side, we think that the limitation should be raised from 30 to 60, so double the guests. I know that historically the administration had consistently rejected these requests. However, a small amount of people does not correlate to how many, just because it's 10 people versus 60 people doesn't mean there won't be something bad happening to a group of 10 people. If you say that, I feel as though we might as well just not have any party rule at all. And I don't see why decreasing the party guests would help out the students because from 15 to 30, 15 is the minimum, and you're decreasing the minimum to 10, or the maximum to 10, which is underneath 15. And I feel like that's unfair to the students and unfair to just the general population because when people go to college, a huge part of their college decision is, will I be able to have fun? Will I be meeting people and this and that? And if the maximum is 10, that just causes a lot of students to be more cautious. They may not want to come to Warren. And I think that, putting it as 10 is just, people are going to get more in trouble. Parties can't be prevented. And if the maximum is 30 and there's a 60, if it's a minimum of 10, anyone that hosts a party is just going to get in trouble automatically.
I mean, the point of this meeting, at least from my point of view, is to restrict a little bit the regulation, to make it more complicated to have this kind of incidents. So we try to keep small parties, and if we allow more students to be in one apartment, it's more difficult to do this because people becomes more excited when there's a big party, and a big party is when there's a lot of people.
Well, I feel as though that from our side, we feel as though that the party guests should be doubled because it's just I don't the people that were there that caused the brawl didn't go to Warren, and I think if it's a problem of safety, there's already regulations on how many kegs of beers there are, and there's already a time limit that must be obeyed. I feel as though having 60 guests that's in the confined rule, rather than having 30 and then having people get in trouble for having a party, is ridiculous. There's RAs that go around to check, right? And then we can hire more campus police to regulate the party, or maybe have a police on site at the party. But I feel like doubling the guests just saves the student a lot of hassle and a lot of caution. And I feel like the goal of the meeting is to prevent this event from happening again. And if the goal of the meeting is that, then I think that the problem is how many campus police there are and the problem of outside guests. I don't think it's a problem of how many people there are actually at the party.
Well, I think this have a lot of influence, but maybe we can talk first about the alcohol and guest rules. Like by guest, I mean people from outside the campus. And then if we really restrict that two issues, maybe we can.
Maybe we can increase.
Maybe we can.
Okay.
Do some modification of this.
So, is it the current alcohol policy? Is that
there's 1 keg allowed for
1 keg allowed per party?
Per party. So, our proposal will be to have 1 or 2 cans for students. So they can. The purpose is they can have parties, have fun, but not get drunk, because it's not what we are looking for educating the students, and also it's also the reason for the majority of the problems. Last year, the police reported 502 incidents, and 75 of them were related with alcohol. So we really want to be strict on this point.
1 to 2 cans per student?
Yeah.
But how are you gonna regulate that, and what's the plan? I feel as though, 1 to 2 cans per student, that's hard to regulate, and you're gonna need to spend more money in that department. But on our side, we feel as though that 1 keg means about 2 to 3 glasses of beer per student, and that's generally pretty low, because if a party's 3 hours, that's 1 can every 1.5 hours. And I feel as though the students should determine what amount of beer is responsible for themselves. Like, clearly a small person, a small woman will handle 2 cans of beer differently than a large male. And I think that 2 kegs makes more sense to students, because
2 kegs.
Yeah, 2 kegs. And
but you are also increasing the permission here. Like, you are becoming less restrictive with this policy.
But having 2 kegs, and if for 30 students, it's like it doesn't create a rush to drink beer. Like, when people go to parties and there's only 1 keg, they want to drink as much as they can. Because if there's 30 people, then they're like, oh, I won't get enough, or people determine what's responsible for themselves. So if we have 2, then it can allow people to just space out and casually drink rather than rush to tap the keg for their fair share if they pay for it. And I feel like kegs is a safer alternative than cans or glass bottles, because you can't break a keg, and you can't there's only plastic cup to pour the beer in. So I think having 2 kegs is a safe alternative than having people bring glass bottles in or having people bring cans in.
I don't agree with you, because our point is to keep people control, and if there are 2 kegs, we don't know if they are going to drink them or not. But if there were a lot of problems now with only 1 keg, we cannot allow 2 kegs.
But I feel like the basis of our problem is the outside guests that cause the brawl. That's why we're meeting here. And I feel as though if that's the case, then it's a security issue. I
don't think maybe this problem was caused by guests, but not all the problems are because of the guests. So I don't think we should just focus on restrict the guest policy. But yeah, alcohol definitely has to be restricted.
But the point is, I think that having a better policy, increasing the alcohol amount, increasing the guests, would be a better name for our school, as student-wise, because schools have become more liberal towards drinking, and party schools are something that kids look for nowadays. And for the benefit of the future school, restricting this policy isn't going to help gain student attraction, because a lot of campuses are dry campuses, which means no alcohol is allowed. And I feel like in dry campuses, that just it doesn't help enrollment and doesn't help with the schools. accepting students.
I understand this point, but again, I don't agree because our priority is safety, and we have to attract the students to our campus for the level of our education, not only because of parties, because if not, it's going to decrease the level of our education. So we don't want just to sell our university because of the parties, and we don't want to be the ones that allow bigger parties and more alcohol on campus.
I think that I think the root of the problem is security. And it's like enhancing, like making a party bigger, like in the rule book, or having 2 kegs. I don't think I think that's helps students, because if someone has a party for 30 students and is registered, like parties generally grow bigger than that amount anyways. And so then, like, having the rule for 60 students and 2 kegs, it's not enabling, it's just helping the student, because with or without the rule, there's going to be probably 60 people. They're probably going to sneak in more alcohol and this and that, and it just makes it safer for the student, so they don't have to illegally buy it, they don't have people bringing it in, they can legally have it there. And I think that's the solution. And I want to go back to the brawl, and I think that only happened because of security. So,
but what do you mean for security? That we have to have more people controlling, or?
Yeah, I think that there should just be more campus police, and I think that the guest policy should be changed. So,
I mean, it's also more difficult when you have a lot of people in a party to make sure there's not going to be more people than 60. Like, if we have 10, 15 people in one apartment, we can control that. But when there are 60 people, it's very difficult because it's a big party on campus, so a lot of people is talking, they talk to another friend, and then it's going to be a lot of more people than 60.
But I don't think that restricting the student and controlling them in a party, the party is supposed to be fun, I don't think controlling them is something that's going to be beneficial.
But controlling, I mean, not have this kind of incidents that alcohol brings to the campus. So the point of a party is having fun with friends, and I think that if you spend 3 hours with some friends just drinking a couple of beers, it's enough. Like, you don't have to become crazy. And if they want to gather with a lot of people, then they can go to another pub, like somewhere outside the campus. Because we also have to take into consideration that the apartment is inside a building, so in the building there's more people, and when there's a big party, it's annoying for the other people, and maybe there's people that want to sleep or that want to study. Not everybody in the building is going to be in the party. Mm-hmm. So we also have to take in consideration the other students, like not only help the people who want to party.
But I feel so going into school, like on a weekend night, you anticipate having parties. Like if you want to do something quiet, if you want to do homework, you generally go to the library. Like with almost any college in America, when you go to school, you don't anticipate it being nice and quiet on a Friday night unless it's a dry campus. So let's go back to. So, let's talk about.
Okay, we seem to really disagree on this point, so yeah. Let's talk about the guest policy and security.
So, guest policy is currently.
There's nothing, no?
I think that there isn't a current rule in the guest policy, but in order for us to have the safety of the students, I know that other colleges have a rule where they have to check in a guest. I think that Warren College is currently an open college, so there's no security, like anyone can just come onto campus and party. And I think in order for the students to be safe, I think that students should check in their guests with campus police, because a lot of other schools do that in the Boston area. So I feel as though, like, in order for people to have responsibility, the students should, like, maybe make their guests go to campus police or tell their RA if they're having someone over, and just, like, say, oh, I'm responsible for this guest, so that the other people in the apartment or the other people in the building don't get fined for this problem that some random person that's not their friend that they don't know.
Okay, that's a good policy. What about not allow people from outside the campus after a certain time? Like let's say 9 p.m. or...
I don't think that's reasonable because, like, a lot of people, I don't know, sometimes there's extenuating circumstances. Sometimes people come to campus, like, they don't come to campus for a party. Sometimes they just come to visit a friend after 9. So I feel like putting that restriction on students is just a little over the top. I feel like checking in guests at any time is a reasonable solution.
So, do you want to allow checking guests also to be registered in a party? Like maybe, like, because the students in the party have to be registered, maybe we can just not allow any guests.
You don't want to allow any guests for the party?
I mean, they are the problem.
But but I feel like that's so broad that that's like an overreaction to say that you can't have any outside friends at a party. Like, as long as they're registered and checked in, I feel as though that's a reasonable solution.
Okay, but then we have to set some punishment for these guests if they get in trouble during the party. Not only like, well, I feel that it's good that the student that registered the guest is responsible for him, but then we have to set the punishment for the student.
Well, I think that punishment-wise, if his guest does something, like, that doesn't mean that he should be faulted or he should be kicked out of school because, yes, his friend drank, but the guy who created the brawl should be punished. He should not be allowed on Warren College again. Like, I think the school has authority to say that this kid is not allowed on campus again. And if you register him, then he just shouldn't be allowed to be here. But with regards to punishing the student who has him,
but you said before that the student who has them has to assume the responsibility for him. And I think it's a good idea, but I will also say that not to allow this guest again. But not only this, but also the other student has to pay some fine depending on the issue. But because if not, it's so easy, like this guy doesn't come back again, but he already made the problem. So I don't think it's enough just not to allow him again on campus.
I feel as though that I don't think that a fine is something that will stick because no one wants to lose money, but I feel as though a punishment with regards to school is something else, like not expelling or not suspending, but say like when he registered for class, he has to register later, or when he registered for housing, he has to register later. Then like everyone, like he registers last for like, because if you take something like that, he's lives on campus, and then like anyone can pay money and anyone can be bitter about money. But I think the lesson learned will be having the student register later for class or register later for housing for the following year.
I mean, I would set like first the other rules that we have to get talk about what to do when there's more alcohol, more guests, and all kind of things that are allowed. So I think we should apply the same rule if it's a guest or not, except for expelling from college. But for example, if we would say like if there's more alcohol, he's not going to be able to host more parties in his apartment, then the rule has to be applied even if the problem is from a guest or from him. I don't think we should set this kind of punishment related with academic issues, because we don't want to like this guy have disadvantages in the academic part because of his friend. So I think it's more fair and this kind of punishment related to parties than to the academic life. So I would say that if the first checking a student and guest, and then if the guest is in trouble, he's not allowed to come back again on campus.
Guest is not allowed back on campus?
Yeah. And the host has to have some responsibility related with the guest he brought. Then it's a way to prevent the people to bring guests that they think they can get in trouble. Like, it's completely fine if they invite a friend just to be there to chill, or I don't know if there's not going to be any problem, but
I think in order to be fair for the students, if you dish out a punishment for them, I feel as though the students should have the most fair is the three chance. So like maybe the first chance, like the host does something bad, or like if the kid does something bad, or like he's just belligerently drunk and the party's not over, the host, like for parties in general, should get a warning, and the second time he should get a fine, and then the third time the academics should be accounted for, or like he should register late for class, because I feel as though that's a reasonable policy that students will say, oh, okay, like if I get warned the first time, then I know what to do the second time. If I do it the second time, like they should be smart enough to avoid it. And I feel like that's a fair policy, rather than just saying, oh, you did this once, I'm going to charge you $400, and then the next time you do it, it's another $400, because the monetary like, I feel like there should be like a scale in punishment.
Okay, you would say first time a warning, sounds good.
Yeah.
And then the second time I would say to respond with the rule that we will apply to him, except
Wait, what's the rule?
expelling. No, I mean for every case there's a different rule. For example, the actual rule for this, for example, illegal parties, they have to pay 75.
Yeah.
So if there's they will have to respond with the same punishment, no matter if it's he or if the guest who get in trouble. But except expelling from college or suspending. I mean, you said the second time a fine, and I say the second time depends on the rule that we should apply. It may be a fine, it may be not being able to doing more parties, or
I feel like so what do you think the second one should be? The second strike, like the first one's a warning, the second one's a what? Should be a fine?
I mean, apply the same rule. Like, assume the responsibility for their guest as if he was the responsible.
I'm not understanding.
Sorry. I mean, they're having, like, depending on which rule the guest breaks, he should respond to it, like, according to the rules set. Do you understand?
So, no.
Okay, let's say a fine, because it's difficult because it depends on every case,
Yeah.
because we are not going to expand. But just first one, second fine.
Second, some type of fine. And then third,
I would say he cannot
he cannot host a party again, maybe.
not host more parties, and he cannot bring more guests, because if he brings 3 guests that get in trouble, it's because there's something wrong with his kind of guest.
I feel as though having him not host a party is enough. I don't, because you can't broadly say that, like, oh, you can have no friends on campus. Like, not all of his friends are like hoodlums, and clearly with alcohol in them, they cause problems. But if he can't host a party and his friends are only coming for the party, then they won't come. But if he has like someone from home over, like in the daytime and this or that, like having him not host a party is enough. Because
a friend of him can host another party and then he invite his friends again. Do you understand? Like, maybe we can allow him to have guests during the day but not during the night or something like this. But
like, assuming that like his friends cause problems, like, and and everyone has to register a guest, then I feel as though there should be I don't think giving him no guest rights, I think that's a little bit absurd and it's like an overreaction. I think that you should just put a limit on him, like he can only check in 2 guests, or like he can only check in a certain number of guests after the 3rd time, because he can't host a party anymore and his friends are causing problems at parties. So
I would say that he cannot invite more friends to parties. And that means, for example, not hosting friends after 8 p.m. or something like this.
No, because if you have a party and you have to register your guests for the party, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, just say, like, your friends you can't register these guests for the party. Like, your friends just can't.
But even if it's another person's party?
Yeah, because no matter whose party it is, they're going to have to register people, right? And if friends aren't allowed on campus, like, I feel as though, like, there's always going to be a trail of who's at the party, who does what, and, like, if you register a guest, it can only be traced.
Okay, so no host on parties, and he cannot register guests on parties.
Yeah. Cannot register previous offender in party?
No, previous or not previous, like, he cannot register his guests in parties. Because if they are previous, they are already expelled, like...
Oh, okay. Cannot register guests, outside guests, at party?
At any party in campus. So...
Okay. So, I think with number 5, it says any damage done in the vicinity of the party will be billed to the party host. This may include damage to the floors and stairwells. I think that this rule shouldn't be there anymore because a brawl is a rare event, but in any given time, one building, like 4 rooms could be having a party and it's hard to determine, who caused what damage. So I feel as though registering the guests will prevent this from happening anyway. Because if you have to register guests and you have to be responsible for people, then less damage will be done. And it's unfair to bill, like, if someone's fire, like the exit sign gets pulled down or this gets pulled down, it's unfair to bill someone who lives there for it because, like, any drunk person can run through a building and, like, smash a wall or, like, break something.
Yeah, but we really need to prevent this kind of accidents. If there's a party, the drunk people will come from this party. So, in fact, I was going to say that we should increase the fines of this kind of incidents because this is not having fun, like breaking things. So, it's another incentive to keep people controlled, like not organizing a crazy party that everybody starts breaking things. This cannot be acceptable, and it's not related with having fun breaking things. So I think we cannot be flexible at this point. Like we should increase like fine, like triple damages billed to the party host.
And I don't think it's a monetary problem. I think it's just like everything goes back to, like, we should go back to how many guests are allowed per party and the amount of alcohol allowed per party. I feel like those are the main concerns for the student side.
Yeah, I mean, we can discuss of the number of guests because it's more related of having fun. If there's 10 or 15 students in the party, but we cannot allow people like breaking stuff and just not get billed for it.
Yes, but it's not about a person breaking something. It's just that, like, in any dorm, if something breaks, like, it's hard to say who broke it. And I think that's a security thing, too. Like, it has to do with security. It doesn't have to do, like, say there's 4 rooms, they all have a party, and something breaks. Who do you charge for it? There's no way to know who did it, so you can't just pick any arbitrary room and charge them $500 to fix something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. And obviously, we have to have some kind of proofs.
And that has to do with security.
There's people, the security people can be walking around, so probably they are going to see if there's like something like this, and if they notice during the night or the next day of the party, so it's quite obvious. But even though we can try to prove who broke it, so try to be fair with this, but the university is not going to pay for these damages.
But I think the problem is with security, and I think that, I don't know, see, I just want to propose, like, back to the beginning of party guests. I think that 10 is too low, and, I don't know, like, clearly you think that 60 is too high. So I feel as though we should have 45 party guests with 2 kegs per party, and then increase security, because I think the root of this problem is also security. And I feel as though since students pay upwards of $50,000 a year, that, like, they should be able to have the security on campus and more people patrolling. Because I don't think telling kids they can only have a party with 10 people maximum is going to help out, like, again, with enrollment and stuff. Like I mentioned before, when kids go to school, like, clearly they want one that's going to be fun, where they're going to meet people, and that's going to be at a party.
Yeah, but
Like 10 people is just too less, and having someone with 10 people is just going to, like, it's just a rule that's easily going to be broken. No one's going to buy a party that has only 10 people, and that creates so much more other trouble. Like, like they're going to have, they're just, like, if they have 15 people and an R comes by, you have 5 too many people, so you're going to have, 75 per student, 5 times 75? What is that, like, 300 something? Like, I think that's just a little bit ridiculous. Like, I just want to have a party, and how can you tell me that, the rule was previously 15 to 30, and then you're decreasing. Like,
we are having a lot of problems. That's why we want to control our parties.
But now you're saying that the maximum student allowed limit is underneath the previous minimum of 15. That's just taking too much.
Because we still have problems.
But that's just taking too much away from the students, and I feel like the problem is with security. And, like, I feel as though with increased security and the guest policy and the host rules of the 3 strikes, I feel like that's going to definitely decrease it. And if we have more campus police walking around or, like, checking guests for alcohol and, like, having campus police do their job, like, kids that pay $50,000 a year here should be entitled to more security. Like, a school is also about academics, but a school is also about having fun in, like, the college life.
Look, we can talk about the number of guests in a party, but only if we restrict alcohol. Because if there's a lot of people and more alcohol, it's going to be a disaster. Like, it's going to be a lot of troubles. Like, we cannot do this.
Well, I think that you can, but just have more security. Like, have someone, like, come check on the party, like, every hour, or come check on how the students are doing. Like, it's not putting a babysitter, but, like, if a party lasts until 1 and it starts at 9, like, have someone come every couple of hours and just knock on the door and say, hey, like, what's going on, just to check. Like, that's the safety of our party, and I feel like someone that pays $50,000 a year should be entitled to that.
But that is not going to be enough, because if a person comes every 2 hours, then it can happen like in 30 minutes, like sometimes someone starts fighting, or
that's why you have people on call, like
drunk.
have people standing outside the building, have people that's what RAs are for. RAs come check on the party all the time, or like they knock and they look, but like,
yeah, and we currently have RAs, and there are still a lot of problems, and I don't want to put a person in every party to control, because then...
So you can have one CP or one campus police at the door of the party, or at the door of the building, and like, I think that registering the guests is enough. Like, if you register your guests and something happens, then there's going to be a consequence, and I think that's the basis.
But that's not a change. Like, we are already registering guests, and there are a lot of problems, so...
No, I think that telling people they can only have 10 people at a party is just ridiculous.
I mean, then we have to talk about the alcohol issue. We cannot allow 2 kegs.
But how are you going to regulate, how are you going to prevent smuggling of alcohol, and how are you going to prevent outside alcohol from coming in?
I mean, we are going to set a fine, like if they exceed the number of cans that they're allowed according to the number of guests registering. So we are not going to register at every party, but some parties, like aleatory. So if they buy more beer, and they are like, they put in risk the having to pay a fine. Like, let's say, I don't know,
I feel like everything is resulting to a fine. Like, how are you going to prevent outside alcohol from coming in? Because setting rules also require, like, what's the how are you going to prevent other people from coming in with other alcohol? Whereas if you just have a keg, or if you have 2 kegs, then it'll pretty much ensure, like, oh, like, no one, like, there's enough beer for the people there, and the kegs can't be retapped, and whatever beer's not drinking, it just gets thrown away. Like, I feel like having enough alcohol, having it registered, and then having it's just a more reasonable solution, because, like, cans or beer, like, it just creates so many problems. Like, if people can break glass bottles and this and that, but with kegs, like, if you have 2, it prevents other people from bringing it in, and you just have plastic cup. Like, you can't break a keg and hit someone with it.
I don't know, like, we can, like, set sometimes some registrations, and we are not, like, of course, if there are 4 cans more, we're not going to notice it, but if we register after the party or during the party how many cans are there, and then we find out that there are, like, 20 cans more than allowed, so they are going to...
you can't regulate how many cans someone has. Like, are you going to count the cans after the party? Like, what are you going to do to regulate 2 cans per person? Like,
I mean,
like,
the
someone
thing
could say,
is
like, oh, I'll drink 1 and you drink 3, or I'll have none and you drink 4. Like, having 2 cans per person isn't going to make that much sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it
like,
happens
the
same with a cake, that some people is not going to drink and some other people are going to drink more.
Yeah, but I feel like having 2 cans per person is just, like, that's hard to regulate. Whereas if you just have 2 kegs and people who drink want to drink, and they're just responsible for themselves, like, any mature adult will say, oh, I can stop after this, and if they get drunk then, and they do something bad, and they have to be registered, then it goes back to the party host. And, like, a keg by itself is only 2 glasses of beer per person anyway.
What about if we set, like, really strict punishments for those ones who break the rules, so we prevent people from breaking them? Like, people will be afraid of breaking the rules, so they are not going to break the rules. And then we can allow a little bit more, because we know that they are not going to exceed the maximum we set.
So you want... Okay, so what are you proposing numbers-wise? Because I feel as though if you say there's a really strict punishment, I want to say, like, my original plan, 45 guests, so that's an increase of 15 from before, rather than to 60, 2 kegs per party, and then the punishment for the separate punishment is a 3-strike rule. And you can put a monetary fine on it, say that...
I mean, we have to talk about different cases, like if there's more alcohol, if there are more guests, and...
So if there's more than 2 kegs per party...
I don't think I feel like 2 kegs is still so much that... Like, now 1 keg was...
It feels like
more than enough, so...
With 1 keg, people are sneaking in alcohol, but with 2, people will be deterred from doing it. And that...
Or not, or people can become really drunk. Like, I will say...
Like, in order for... You would say what?
That, of course, the number of kegs has to depend on the number of guests in the party. Because if there are 15 guests, we are not going to allow 2 kegs.
So we should say, like, oh, if you have 45 guests, then you have 2 kegs. But if you have anything under than 30, so, I don't know, like, maybe 1 to 25 guests, 1 keg, and then 25 to 45 2 keg. And if you break this rule, like if you have more than 25 guests and you have more than 1 keg, then you should have a monetary fine. So
First of all,
the fine is already really large. It says that any other alcohol except the registered keg will be fined at 100 per student. So if they have more than this amount, say they have like 30, then they're going to get charged $500, and nobody wants that. I feel as though in order to prevent this from happening, you can say like, 150 per extra guest. Because that's 50 more than the original.
No, but that's nothing. Like, first of all,
Because what's a strict monetary punishment for you?
are really strict, like making sure that nothing is going to happen. Like from
And like, I mean, are you?
for beer,
And
no, they have
I
to pay.
don't think a really strict rule is gonna. I think it's more like, again, back to security. Like, if you do this per extra guest, and then to ensure that nothing happens, like, you should, like, the party rule should be like, campus police is gonna come, like, to your party to inspect it, or the RA is gonna come every couple hours to inspect your party to be sure. And I feel as though, like, no matter what, like, we determine the guest policy, you're gonna check in guests with campus police, and they're gonna have their ID, they're gonna have their name, so that the guest part is controlled. And then for safety, it's like you should just have campus police come check every couple of minutes, and every hour, or the RA come check every hour. And I think the 1 a.m. policy should stay. The 1 a.m. quiet hour should say, like, all party must end by then.
I mean, I cannot accept all of this that you are saying, because the board wants to really restrict this kind of things. So, as I said you before, we can talk about the number of guests, but I still not sure about the alcohol allowed.
Hey, hi, we have the room at 2.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We have almost 1 hour. So.